This video will be a tutorial on how to answer the 10 and 20 markers, and a little bit of guidance on how to set up your studying for this year, your AS year and your A2 year. So there'll be a few hints and tips, a few do's and don'ts. Hope you enjoy the video. How to revise.
Now, when it comes to revising, create a range of notes on each topic and aim to have at least 3 theories per topic. For example, when it comes to the functionalist view on education, you should have at least 3 theories. So this will be Durkheim, Parsons and Davis and Moore. And you should sum up what they say very briefly, so it could be in a sentence or two. For example, Davis and Moore, moral education. This is where school sorts out people into their desired jobs or best suited jobs. Also, where you can, know their theorists and their methods they use and start brainstorming how you could criticise their perspective. So when you're arranging your notes, you could also colour code the notes, have flashcards, mind maps. The best thing to do is experiment and find out what works best for you. Again, there's a lot of content, and a large part of the topic is to know the content and then apply it to the question and make a contribution to it yourself. A good way to memorise the content and theories is to write essay plans for different types of questions. Now, you go to the AQA website, use the textbooks which have a range of essay questions and start planning out how you would answer it and what theorist you would use.
What books to buy?
Now, there's 2 key books to buy if you're doing AQA A-level in Sociology. You've got book 1 for AS and book 2 for A2. Now, key points are that all the content sections, topic summaries, practice essays, essay tips, everything is within this one book, either for your AS or for your A2. Also, they are written by the AQA examiners, so it may be key to buy the books that are written by the examiners for the exam that you'll be sitting at the end of your AS or A2. Now, the price is £23. When you put that into context, there may be the cost of 2 Nando's or a cinema ticket with your partner. Now, what is more important? To get an A in Sociology or to go to the cinema with your bae?
Hello? Yeah, where are you now? I'll put the tickets. What? You can't make it? Oh, it's fine. We'll sort it out another time, man. It's fine, it's fine. What is the success criteria?
So, for the success criteria, you're marked against 3 AO skills. You've got AO1, AO2 and AO3. I'll briefly talk through each AO skill. So the first one, AO1, your knowledge and understanding. This is where you should show that you know the main theories, the research methods, the concepts that are used by the sociologists. For example, when it comes to labelling theory, how did Rosenthal and Jacobson conduct their experiment with the IQ test in California? You should be able to explain how you know these theories and how in depth you know them. Now, another example would be Marxists such as Bowles and Gintis that believe that education is not meritocratic or that you do not achieve your position for your hard work and ability. See that you use a keyword meritocratic and you've outlined what it is. You're showing that your knowledge and understanding. Now, to expand that further, you may talk about their view on the hidden curriculum, the correspondence principle, and how that links into their view that education is not meritocratic. That would be a good way to show your AO1 skill, knowledge and understanding. Now, for the AO2 application, this is the AO skill that a lot of people find hard to grasp, so I'm going to break it down as much as I can. Now, applications where you can link your concepts, theories to that question at hand and to the debate within your essay. You should also show why the material you selected is relevant, so this is for your explanations. So why have you chosen to talk about certain theorists and certain theories within your essay question? It should be explicit or clear that you pick them for a specific reason. You should be able to connect strengths and limitations to your argument, use material from the item when needed. So if you're doing a 20 marker with the item, which I'll show you how to do later on in this video, you should be able to use material from the item. Also, a key part of application is be able to link ideas from different areas of sociology. The example I've got for you on slide is Afruza, his ISA. So that'll be his ideological state apparatus, where he says that the capitalists use the media, education, religion to control our ideologies and our ideas. Now this is a theory that you can use for any topic within sociology, and there's a few others like Paul Willis and a few others where you can use their theories and apply it to different areas. Now this is showing that you can apply different areas of sociology to the question at hand, showing that you've got a wide array of application and knowledge at hand. Also, importantly, use relevant examples. Now, if you keep up to date with the news and read around a topic, you should be able to use examples to really bring out, illuminate the theories that you're talking about. So it's a key point to keep up to date with the news around you and know more around a topic. Also, use contemporary examples. The point here is that you're a kid within 21st century, 2017, you should be able to use examples to really bring out, criticize and underline the theories at hand. Now for AO2 I've got an acronym that should be able to make it easier to grasp. So select is all about the information that you select, the theories that you select. First of all, select relevant theories. Make sure that you're picking theories that will answer the question that are relevant to the topic at hand. Use examples from sociology, so use examples from theorists, from research they've conducted, and from the world around you, or the news, etc. Now, L, link theories to the argument at question. Make sure that the theories that you've linked, or that you put into your essay, have a direct link to the argument or question. E, explain the links and relevance. Always justify why you've put some arguments within your essay, and connect it all together. Select. AO3, analyze and evaluate. This is where you break down the argument and state how they link together. You can compare, contrast ideas, show similarities and differences, but the main emphasis here is to be critical. Don't just list different ideas and how they're different. You've got to be critical. What are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and what are the alternative views? I'm going to show you how to put that into essay question later on. Make sure you organise your essay within paragraphs, so you have an intro, a body, a conclusion, and a clear line of reasoning, or a chain of reasoning. This is whereby all parts of your essay, all the paragraphs link together, and you're building upon an argument. You're adding to the argument constantly. It's not a shopping list of disconnected points, it all links to one another. Also, always have evidence for and against an argument. Draw out any assumptions that are made by the theorists. So don't forget, these theorists, most of them are largely from the last century and beyond. So their views are slightly outdated, not applicable anymore. So draw that out. Make sure you know the strengths and weaknesses, there's advantages, and again, you get most of these from the book, but from your own knowledge, you can view their point of view and bring out the strengths and weaknesses for yourself. So from your own point of view, what is the strengths and weakness of Durkheim's view of social solidarity, etc. and etc. Now, some key words to use would be, this could be seen as deterministic, limited, outdated, biased, or this neglects. These are some prompt words you can use to draw out strengths and weaknesses. Now, I'm not going to run through what each of those mean. That's something for you to do in your own time.
Okay, contributing to the argument. Now, sociology is not all about regurgitating what you see in textbooks or repeating what the theorists have said before you and listing it. It's about you outlining the arguments, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, how does it compare or contrast with other viewpoints. So how does a Marx contrast with a functionalist or compare with a Marxist, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, balancing it up, and then from then on, put forward a counter view. Your own personal point of view, what is your take on what you have outlined in your essay? So contribute to the argument. Show the examiner that, you know what, you've engaged with these theorists, but this is my take on it, this is what I feel. But again, try not to be personal or take a first person point of view when you're writing. So don't say, I think this, I say that, be a bit more academic. So these views are strong in the sense of that, although there could be argued or critique for these points and so on and so forth. So remember, it is vital for you to contribute to the argument. Make sure that you put in your own analysis and evaluation in your essay writing. Structure for a 10 marker.
Structure for a 10 marker. Now for the 10 mark questions, there's some things you have to follow, and I'm going to run through them slowly and give you a structure to use to help you get the best possible marks in the shortest amount of time. Now for a 10 marker, you should be spending ideally 15 minutes. So when you're in your exam, make sure you keep an eye on time and prioritise the marks. The bigger marks are in 20 and 30 mark questions, so prioritise them. Make sure you're not spending anything over 15 minutes on your 10 markers. There's always time to come back to at the end if you feel like you have the time. So this will be the best thing for you to prep beforehand. Time yourself doing 10 markers in 15 minutes and follow the following structure. Before we get into the structure, the 10 markers in sociology will always ask you to outline and explain either 2 factors, features, reasons, causes, effects, functions, way, problems, advantages, disadvantages, and the list goes on. Pay attention to exactly what it's asking of you. So it's asking you to look at 2 factors within schools. It's asking you to look at the factors that happen within schools, so labelling, etc. and etc. Make sure you pay attention, because otherwise it's an easy way to lose easy marks. Now, also pay attention to what it's asking you in terms of ethnicity, class and social groups. The best thing to do is to read through the question and underline the key points. So 2 factors, underline that. Within schools, ethnic groups, make sure you understand what the question is asking of you in full. So the following structure is PENIS. You need 2 penises. Now I'm going to explain what that is exactly. So start off by outlining the point and answer the question. So if you've been asked for 2 points or 2 factors, 2 processes, make sure you start by outlining that process. So within schools, if you're looking at factors within schools that inhibit ethnic differences in achievement, you can talk about labelling, etc. and etc. To start off by outlining your point. Secondly, E, explain your point. So make sure you explain it in full. Again, it's a good chance to show your AO2 and AO1 skills. You're putting in the theory, you're putting in the argument, the concept, and you're explaining it in full. You're showing your knowledge and your understanding. Thirdly, you got the name or sociological theory. This is where you put the theorist name in, or the perspective that your idea is coming from. Again, you're showing your AO1 skill that you can evaluate, that you can understand, and you know the concept. And then moving on, you've got the examples. Again, another AO2 skill here. So you are showing that you can apply examples to the concept, to the theory, and linking it to the question. That is your chain of reasoning there. You're linking everything together, you're making it coherent, and you're doing it in the easy step-by-step process. And fifth, you've got the significance. Outline the significance of the theory, the example, the point in terms of the question, the argument, and today's world. If you're looking at labelling within schools, what is the significance of labelling within schools? What are the knock-on effects? What are the consequences? So on and so forth. So you need 2 of those PENIS paragraphs. 2 penises. 2 penises.
What is a chain of reasoning?
So, what is a chain of reasoning? Now, the chain of reasoning is how you structure your argument, structure your points, and how they're all interlinked together. So it could be a series of steps in the explanation where you're building upon your explanation and developing it further within the body of your essay. For example, if you write an essay on underachievement, males, and role models, you could argue if a lack of male role models results in boys underachieving in education, then you can link it to Charles Murray's view of the lone parent family and how that impacts on boys who don't have the father to teach them the norms and values. You can also link it to Tony Sewell's view of the absent fathers and how boys underachieve and the patterns of family diversity. This is where you've got a concept, an idea, or an argument, and you're linking in different parts of sociology and you're building upon your explanation to make it clear as possible, and you're linking it to the body of your essay. So the best thing to do is separate into paragraphs and drawing links between each paragraph. Your essay is not a shopping list of random objects. It is a continuous list of reasons where you're building an argument, and they're all interlinking together. And again, not everything in your essay is going to be completely on the right pathway, but again, you have to explain the comparisons, the differences, the similarities. That's you showing your AO3 skill. We can balance up different viewpoints, different concepts and ideas, and bring it all together in one coherent chain of reasoning. And also the introduction and conclusion helps that a lot. So your intro should be a starting point, the conclusion sort of ties it all together.
Structure for a 20 marker with an item.
Your structure for a 20 marker is as follows. So the introduction to start you off. Again, Your introduction is your hair. Think about it's the first thing that you notice on a person. It could be the hat. It's the first thing that you see when you look at them. People would argue it might be the teeth or so on, but I always like to think of it as the hair. So you notice if someone's bald or not, or if they got long hair. So the intro is going to be your first impression that you leave on your examiner. When they mark your paper out of the 200 or 300 they're marking, they're going to see your intro first. So it's good that you make a keen impression on them. Similarly to how you might do your hair to impress someone, your intro is how you're going to impress the examiner. For an introduction, if you're talking about an item here, you need to highlight the debate and the question within the item. What is the item debating? What is asking of you? Secondly, define key terms. So is there any key terms, and you've got to define them in your intro. Lay out your argument, and also outline if there's any counter argument. So if you're going to talk about internal factors within schools, for example, in your intro, allude to what might be the external factors. So you might be talking about people's subcultures, labelling within schools. In your intro, outline, although there may be other factors such as the external factors like cultural deprivation, material deprivation, show in your intro that you're going to have a balanced argument throughout the body of your essay. Again, sociology is all about being balanced. So if your item is referring to functionalism, do not only talk about functionalism. You can outline that you're talking about functionalism and what their view is on education, on the family, but again, outline what the counter arguments may be. So Marxists may say this, New Right may say that, etc. Showing your intro, you can be balanced and concise.
Introduction.
When you introduce yourself to somebody, they always first notice your hair and your shoes. So just like your introduction, make sure it's on point. It should be the first impression that you leave on the examiner. Hi, I'm Mr. Bora. Fancy going for a drink?
Well, that's not much of an introduction. Your hair's dead and so are your crepes.
Now, the body of the essay, you're going to follow a PESC structure. So this is a point, explain, strength and weakness. So again, point, explain, strength and weakness. Outline your point. This is where you bring in the theorist or the concept that links into your argument. You're going to explain it, the relevance in terms of your essay and the question. Draw out a strength from your own point of view. So what can you see as a visible strength of that theory? And then weakness. You're going to do this 3 times for a 20 marker. Now on A2, when you're doing your 30 markers, you do the same structure but add a 4th PESC paragraph. The reason with your 30 markers, the examiner wants to see breadth and depth of your knowledge. They want to see you go into extra detail. So for a 20 marker, do your intro and 3 PESC paragraphs. Now, after you've done those paragraphs, you come to any other business paragraph. Any other business is where you bring in any other parts of sociology or information, concepts, theories that you can include in the body of your essay. It's a chance for you to bring in more arguments and solidify your AO skills, making sure that you hit the success criteria. So after your PESW paragraphs, you come on to your any other business paragraph. Now this is where you can outline any issues or concepts that could be relevant or applicable to your question, or any other knowledge that you have on the question that can sort of strengthen your answer. So imagine that you've just spoken to someone who has rejected you. This is your chance to show them what else you may have, whatever our characteristics and qualities you may have that can make you out to be a possible match or a good match for them. Excuse me, let's not debate this. Face facts are one of the greatest. Must be the latest guy to walk up to you, but I always teach sociology.
Oh, you teach sociology? What's your take on Murdoch's view of the family?
Well, that's interesting you say that. Murdoch's view of the family is interesting in that. After you've done that any other business paragraph, always question the question. So this is where you're questioning what you've been asked of. So if you've got a question on ethnic differences in education, you might say, well, is it desirable, is it okay to really examine educational achievement through ethnicity because there's too many variables? Question what you've been asked of. I'm going to show you a few examples of that later on. Then you come to your conclusion. Within your conclusion, you're going to start with either to conclude, to a large extent, to some degree, some sort of sentence starter that makes it clear to the examiner that you've concluded your argument. Now, this is going to be your shoes in terms of the last impression that you leave on your examiner. So think about when you see someone for the first time, you look at their hair and their shoes. The shoes leaves an impression. Your conclusion is your last impression on the examiner who's marking hundreds and hundreds of paper. So, in your conclusion, outline the major strengths and weaknesses of what you've covered in your essay. And then you're going to go on to what side you side on. So what is your viewpoint? What is your contribution to the argument? Do not forget, sociology wants you to contribute to the argument. You're not just regurgitating the theorists of the past and the theories in the past. You are now adding to it. So where do you side? Which theorist for you has the strongest point of view and why? Have a final say on the question. So before you end your conclusion, say what your view is on the question. What's your final definitive answer? Now, if you ever run out of time with your conclusion, do bullet points. My last ever A2 exam, I ran out of time with my 20 marker or 33 marker in those days. So I had to do my conclusion in bullet points. Again, it's not ideal, but if you've got no time, you have to do what you must do.
Do not do the following.
Do not do the following. Here are a few tips of stuff that you should not be doing within your essay writing. So do not just list the theories. Again, it's not a shopping list. You have to be critical. So if you're going to outline a theory or include it in your writing, be critical. What's the strengths, weaknesses, significance of it? How does it link to your argument? Do not just focus on one theory. Again, sociology is all about creating a balanced argument. So if you have a question on functionalism, Marxism, do not just focus on that one theory. You've got to be balanced, bringing other counterpoints. So always got two sides to the argument. Do not leave anything unexplained. If you're going to bring anything into your essay, again, explain it. Even if it's brief, you're explaining it, you're developing it, you're showing a link to your essay. Now, for a 20 marker, spend about 30 minutes. Do not miss any marks. Do not overdo it. So time yourself, 20 marks, 30 minutes.
So your essay should not be a shopping list. What I mean by this is it shouldn't be a list of random theories. It should be a constructive, critical piece of work. So I'll apply it to my spaghetti bolognese now. So I'm not going to list that I've got spaghetti, I've got a mince, I've got a pepper, I've got domio. Justification for why I've got certain parts. So I've got domio because it's quite tasty, it's value for money, and it creates a lot of spaghetti bolognese. I've got the jumbo mushrooms because they're value for money, they're a bit more tastier, and they make good spaghetti bolognese as well. Linguine, finer pasta, very good. Explain that in full. Now, when you put in the theories into your essay, explain everything in full, give justification, and make it a critical piece of writing with a good chain of reasoning. I put this theory in here because it links into that, so on and so forth. Intro to conclusion, make it all link together. It shouldn't be a shopping list whatsoever.
So a 10 mark question I'm going to use is as follows. Outline and explain, as all 10 markers will be 2. Again, it'll always be 2. I'm going to use processes within schools that may affect ethnic differences in educational achievement. Now, I'm going to use that structure I advise you to use. Again, it's an efficient way to hit the AO criteria and move on. So first of all, start with your point, the pen. Right, so within schools, right, I'll write out first of all, then we come back. So within schools, some teachers may have ethnocentric views. Now I've put in the key words, I've got to explain it, meaning they label pupils according to their race and how they are perceived to get on with classwork. Again, it's a little bit informal, I think the point still remains that defining ethnocentric views and how that can impact on the pupils, classwork, and within the British education system. Now, that's my point. So I've looked at the question and I want to define the first process within school. So what I'm alluding to is that teachers do in fact, could do, again, you can't always say that you can't generalize, you have to sort of have a disclaimer in there that it's not always the case, but it could be a factor that's impacting educational achievement. The fact that some teachers may have ethnic-centric views and they may label pupils may result in them underachieving within the system. So now I've got to explain that in my E point. So in short, this can result in ethnic minorities, too many N's in there, ethnic minorities being viewed as unable to do higher end work and may restrict their progression. So that's me explaining how that process may affect ethnic differences in educational achievement. So now N, again, it's a name for a theorist or for a sociological perspective. Now I'm going to use right study. So right study, and again I can't remember the year, so I'm going to write right study of a multi-ethnic primary school found that teachers assumes that Asian pupils would have poorer linguistic skills and use simple language to communicate with them. This was found to impact their progression and education. So now I've put in a theory that will support my point and my explanation, and it's all linking together now. So this is the meat behind my points in short. So now at the bottom, after this I want to put in an example. So my example may be that if pupils are labelled according to their economic or socio-economic background, then again you could bring in pupil premium here. So you're saying that if the Conservative government brought in a policy of identifying pupils based on backgrounds, and teachers may use this data to discriminate against pupils. and so on and so forth. Then you've got the significance. So what's the significance of what I've put so far? Now, I would argue that this can lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy, so I'm making links to other concepts within sociology. If the pupils are being labelled, they may end up living up to that label, internalising it, and it may hold them back as a whole. And I might bring in Hargreaves et al. So Hargreaves et al. Said that teachers would have a label in their head, they'll test it out, then if they find anything that would prove their hypothesis right or their label right, they will sort of stick or stabilise their label. I might bring in Hargreaves to show that I've got extra knowledge, I've got bigger AO1 skill than what I showed before, I've got a wide array of knowledge. I might talk about subcultures, how labelling leads to subcultures, and so on and so forth. So that'll be your penance structure that you would use, and you do that twice. So you need 2 penances for a 10 marker. Once you've done that, you can move on to your 20 markers. So I'm going to run through how I'd mark this 10 marker now. Because I've only done 1 penance structure, I'm going to give myself a maximum of 5 out of 10. So the maximum I can get is a 5. Again, if I've done 2 of these, then I can get a 10 out of 10. First of all, with the question, it's asked you to outline and explain 2 processes within schools. So looking at internal factors there, such as the labelling, people's subcultures, things that happen within the school. Now, if I was to speak about cultural deprivation, material deprivation, concepts and issues that occur outside of school, I could not get that amount of marks at all. So make sure that you're answering the question. So with my point here, within schools, some teachers may have ethnocentric views, meaning they label pupils according to their race and how they are perceived to get on within the education system or the British education system. Now my point is directly answering the question. I'm talking about what happens within schools. I'm talking about race here, a keyword there, race. So again, good point. In short, this can see ethnic minorities being viewed as unable to get on with tasks to a higher level, to higher standards. Again, explanation here is not the best, it's very brief, but it does the job. So again, I get a mark for that. Now, the theorist here, right study of a multi-ethnic primary school found that teachers assumed that Asian pupils had poor linguistic skills, so use simple language around them. This will lead them to have a slower development and be at a disadvantage. Perfect. So I've linked the theory, the concept to my point, explanation. I'm backing it up. I am actually reinforcing that idea. Showing my AO1 skills, my AO2 skills. Pupils are now labelled according to the social economic background, such as the conservative government's emphasis on pupil premium. Significantly, the process of labelling may hinder the achievement and attainment of these typically disadvantaged groups. So what I'm showing here, another example of AO2, I'm linking in social policy into this question. Now as you go through the course, when you do all your modules, you're going to cover more concepts, more issues that you can tie in to your essay mark. So again, when you first start off doing your education modules or whatever modules you do at the beginning, you're not going to have that wide variety of knowledge. As you go through the course, you'll be able to build upon it and include it in more of your essay writing. So again, good example of A2, applying different areas of sociology to the question at hand. Now, significance. This can lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy as outlined by Hargreaves. Again, if you're going to outline a concept and you know the theories behind it, add it in because you're showing the AO1 skill there is very strong. Where labels are tested and stabilized, so this is where a teacher would label a pupil, test out their label. If a pupil lived up to their label, then it would be stabilized and sticked upon them. So if a kid was seen to be naughty or thought to be naughty, a teacher may look at their homework. If the homework's not done, they might be thinking, okay, you know what, you've lived up to that label, I labelled you as naughty, you've not done your homework, that's your label from now on, in other words. And although not always the case, this could lead to anti-school subculture for certain minorities. So again, I linked it back to the question. Again, this first penance is not the strongest, but it's short, sweet, simple, and it attempts to answer the question. So I would award myself there 5 out of 5.
Handling the item.
Okay. Now I'm going to show you how to tackle a 20-mark question with the item. So the item is here, handwritten up for you, and the question is in this green box here. I'm going to show you my completed version of this answer, typed up, because as you can see, my handwriting is not the best in the world. So I think we may be better to show you that one written up straight away on the laptop. So item A, before we get into item, let's read the question. Use material from item A. So this question is 20 marker. wants me to make reference to material from item A, so I better make sure I pay attention to the item and elsewhere. So it also wants my own knowledge. That's fine, we've got plenty of that. We've been revising all summer, all year. We got it in the bag. Assess sociological explanations. So they want you to put theory, they want the concepts, and we've got that in abundance as well, of gender differences. Okay, so again, the main bulk of your essay should be looking at gender differences, but you should be alluding to other differences such as class, race. Again, it's all about having a balanced argument, but again, the main bulk of it should be focused on gender. So what's the difference between boys and girls? I'm guessing it says here. And look at educational achievement. So I'm not going to talk about crime or media. I'm not going to. I'm going to focus on educational achievement. So if I look through the item here, and again, as you go through the item, underline the keywords because you have to refer back to this in the body of your essay. If you make no reference to this item, then you can't get anywhere near the top marks. There are significant gender differences in educational achievement in the United Kingdom. Okay, so when we talk about the UK, I'll focus on the UK in that case. At all levels of the education system, girls tend to do better than boys. Okay, so you want to look at why boys are failing and why girls are doing so well. Girls tend to do better than boys, for example, since 1990, so we need to look from that period onwards. About 10% more girls than boys have gained 5 or more A start to C GCSE grades at GCSE every year. Okay, I'll look at that. In addition, more girls than boys are now entering university. Okay, let me underline that, because we're going to look at explanations from sociology as to why that could be the case. So what does sociology say could be happening? So what do theorists say could be happening here? These are relatively recent developments, and some sociologists, which ones, I'm going to outline them for you, explain them in terms of changes both within the education system and the wider society. So now, this item wants me to consider what's happening within the education system and within wider society. Okay, can we pause there for a minute? Okay, can I go? Yeah? Right, okay, so within the item, here's some of the concepts I could include within my essay. So the impact of feminism, because it's asking me to look at wider society as well as within school. So wider society. Changes in the family and labour market, and again, wider society. Equal opportunities and laws, policies, again, wider society. Curriculum and assessment issues, so that's within schools. So let's put in schools, again. Teachers' attitudes, so I can talk about labelling if I want to. Stereotyping, again, labelling. Marketisation, so that would be wider society. So I've got policy there. Policy again. Feminisation of education, you can say in school and both. So again, if you revise and go through each topic, you'll know what theories you can include for some of these. Now, the AQA book, the book one I showed you before, this book here, would have all the sections on these concepts here. So again, it's a good book to have, so you can constantly refer back to it, and all the theories are outlined for you within that book. So I strongly recommend you purchasing that book. And again, the list goes on, as you can see. So as I was writing my essay, I constantly had the item next to me, because you should be referring back to the item constantly. If you ever feel you've not looked at the item for a long time whilst writing your essay, stop, have a glance back, see if you've gone off track or whether you're keeping on board. So here's the item again, keep it there with me. How I'm going to do this, I'm going to read through the essay and mark it, so you can see what a star, or I like to think an A-star essay may look like. So, gender differences in achievement tend to suggest that there is now a sizable gap between girls and boys, with the former outperforming, so the girls outperforming the boys, and in terms of GCSE passes by some distance. Again, as outlined in item A, so I'm being explicit there, I'm saying to you, right, I've got the item in front of me, I've read through it, I understand what it says, Now I'm going to outline the debate within the argument, within the item. There's a certain issue going on within the item. I'm going to outline it for you now to show you that I've got the AO1 skill. Since 1990, there has been a shift in achievement, with more girls achieving better GCSE passes and attending university in greater numbers. Sociological explanations have ranged from changes in family market and labour market, feminisation of education, and people's subcultures, along with others. So within the item, as you can see, get the item back up, they made reference to the idea that there are some sociologists that explain the changes within the education system and wider society. Now, I'm being explicit, I'm unraveling a bit. I'm going to create a detail and telling you what those changes are. So rather than being vague as it is in the item, I'm telling you, right, I'm going to tell you some of the changes to show you my AO1 skill. So I've spoken about feminisation of education, people's subcultures, and the family and labour market. These are some of the factors that uncover the internal / external factors that may affect educational achievement. So I'm showing you here, I'm going to be balanced. I'm going to look at what happens inside education or inside the classroom and what happens in wider society. So from my intro, you can see that I know what the items are asking of me. I've unpicked it a bit further and I've outlined to you what I'm going to cover in this essay. And that I'm going to be balanced. But you can see in the bottom part there, I've outlined and covered the internal and external factors. However, this is still part of my intro. With the diverse nature of gender, so again, gender is not a straightforward concept, it's quite diverse. As an insight into educational achievement, many sociological explanations can be argued to be deterministic, biased, neglect more detrimental issues such as race. So I'm showing you now, okay, I'm going to focus on education, but is it more better to look at class or race? Is that more of an insight into how we achieve, or how our characteristics can affect our achievement, should I say. So again, I'm going to follow the structure I told you before. You've got a point, explanation or example paragraph, and you've got a strength and a weakness, that PES paragraph, that PES structure. And again, I always write in paragraphs to show you the chain of reasoning, to show my structure is good. So start off your first point with firstly, so you outline to the examiner, okay, here's my first point, here's my first argument. Over the last decade, there have been major changes within the family and society, such as a sharp increase in divorce rate, a rise in lone parent families, and a fall in young marriages. Again, good AO2 link here. I'm applying family into an education question, but again, it's still relevant to what's asking of me. Now I'm going to explain it and how it links to the question. So girls are now more than ever encouraged to become a breadwinner or dual earner, where they must gain employment and help support others or themselves and their families. This has resulted in an increase in the educational achievement and attendance in higher education. So because they've been encouraged to be a breadwinner or dual earner, their attendance at university has increased dramatically, and they're seeing education as a route to become that breadwinner or dual earner. Now, again, you've got to include theorists, you've got to include names in your 20 markers is essential. So I would include them in the explanation point or your point. So your point or explanation, you can include the theorists there. So Sharp's interviews from the 1970s and 1990s show that once the view was that educational success was unfeminine, it has now shifted to become a hallmark of what independent woman was. So typically it was seen as a sort of unfeminine aspect to be a academic. Now it's been seen as a hallmark of what it takes to be an independent woman. If you want to be an independent woman in the UK, Sharp is saying you have to go to education. That is the viewpoint now, the attitude of the wider society now. Also, with stigmas and attitudes changing, the shift from prioritising a love marriage to educational success has resulted in an increase in educational achievement. So Sharp is saying, once upon a time, women would want to get married, they would prioritise finding the love of their life, the prince to come and save them like a Disney cartoon. But now, what they want is to go to university, get their grades, get their perfect job, and be standing on their own 2 feet. So I've got my point, I've explained it. Now it's time for the strength. So furthermore, what Sharp and the study of ambitions and societal attitudes show is that external factors can have a great impact on educational achievement. So I've explained how that theory is relevant for my essay and how it could be linked to the argument. This link between structure and society is strong, thus proving that structural studies of society can be desirable in explaining issues. Again, it's quite wordy. What I'm saying there is because Sharp has ascertained or understood from her theory that structure of society or how society is made can impact individuals. That is actually proof that looking at sociology from a structural point of view, looking at how the society affects individuals, that could be quite useful, and that's the strength of her theory. Again guys, I've done this topic for 6 years, I've taught it for a year or two, so again my knowledge will be quite, let's say, strong. So you shouldn't be aiming for, well, you should be aiming for this because everyone can achieve this, but what I'm saying here is don't be overwhelmed by what I've put here. Fuller expands by stating that girls in the modern society or modern context believe in meritocracy. Again, because I've used a key word there, I'm going to explain it. Or that there is equal opportunity for everyone and that they may use education to support themselves, which may go some way in explaining the statistics in item A. So I'm saying Fuller is another theorist. I've added another one in there because I know Fuller. I thought let me put her in there just to show that I've got a strong AO1 skill, and it links into what Sharp is saying. Because girls believe in the meritocratic society that they can achieve what they want through their efforts, they're going to push themselves further throughout education to achieve their role, their desired outcome. And I've linked back to item A. I didn't think I've referred back to item A in a while, so I did so. Again, don't constantly refer back to item A throughout, as in every single sentence, but let's say 3 or 4 times, remind the examiner that you're going to meet that mark scheme, and so on and so forth. Okay, the weakness. Although we need to understand the views of boys and how or if they have changed. So how have the views of the boys of how they see themselves within society, how has that changed? Because again, the question is asking to look at failing boys. What is happening with the boys? Why are the boys failing and why are the girls doing so well? So again, you've got to be balanced in that viewpoint. It is also deterministic to suggest that not prioritising marriage results in educational achievement. So Sharp was saying girls don't look for marriage first, they look for the education, so that's why they're doing so well. But again, is that always the case? Is the fact that women are not looking for marriage first of all, is that going to result in them achieving the grades that they do achieve? Is that always the case? How do you explain girls who are religious from faith schools who see marriage as the most important sacrament or pillar of their religion? How do you explain how the faith schools do so well, the all-girl faith schools? I could have put that in, for example. And that would have been a good example of AO2. So I'm applying what happens in the world to the essay. It is also restricted as it does not explain why some sectors are still male-heavy, such as science and engineering. So Fuller and Sharp, it's all well, you're not saying that girls do well with the education system, but how do you explain the fact that science is still male-dominated, engineering, computer science? I think the statistics prove that it's only 5% of the intake of computer science graduates are actually female. So again, how do they explain that? And again, this is not pitch perfect. Parts of it are good, but again, I'm hitting those AO skills. So in the strength and weaknesses part here, I'm evaluating, I'm analysing, I'm being critical. In the explanation point, I am applying the theory to my essay question. And in the point, I'm showing my A1 skill. So here's a theory that links to the essay title. Now, in my second PES paragraph, I'm focusing on the boys. The question is asking to focus on gender differences. So I'm not solely going to talk about what happens to girls and why girls are doing so well. I'm going to talk about what happens to boys. I also covered what happens in wider society. So now I want to look at what happens to boys within schools. So secondly, okay, I'm allowed to examine this. This is my second point, my second key paragraph here. In terms of boys and the curriculum, some DCFF, again this is a report from the Department of Education, have suggested that there's underachievement and it's down to poor literacy and language skills. And the reason that might be is because mothers spend less time reading to the boys, and it also may be seen as a feminine pursuit. So this report says that boys are being read to a lot less than what girls are, and overall the view is that it's a feminine thing to do, to read. Furthermore, education has been tagged again, no one's perfect, but has been tagged by some as feminized. Okay, I'm to explain this in my explanation, with little emphasis on what boys need and how to engage them. So how can I explain that? So Tony Sewell, he's a theorist now. Again, put my second theorist in. Actually, I've had 3 up to now. He reports that boys have fallen behind as education has now become feminized, meaning schools do not nurture masculine traits such as competitiveness and leadership, but instead value attentiveness and methodological working that are more feminine. Also, the shift to coursework has favoured girls rather than boys. So what Tony Sewell is saying here, that school is more feminized. Again, it's more accessible to the girls, it's more female friendly, and the boys are being sort of alienated. So a key point is raised as we have to question whether school life disengages boys and what activities are needed to raise attainment even. Now Mittos and Brown, another theorist, now I've got 4 now, suggests that typical male dominated industries such as heavy industry, like factories and what have you, have declined, meaning most boys do not have a clear sense of future and direction. Moreover, in terms of industry, or the ones that suggested, this may have affected white working class boys. So again, I looked at the theory and it seems to be more focused on working class boys, so I've outlined that in my essay. I'm showing that analytical skill there, that I understand what the theory is saying, but again, is it talking about boys as a whole, or is it talking about working class boys? Whereas girls have a newfound sense of independence through education, and it is questionable whether boys en masse have a clear sense of future, role and identity. Again, I wouldn't start a sentence with again, but I'll carry on. This can be seen to be linked to the family or societal patterns, as there is no longer a clear sense of having to become a breadwinner, as outlined by Murray's view of the lone parent families. So when Murray's talking about the lone parent families, he's saying because the boys don't have the role of becoming a breadwinner, their role and identity has sort of been crushed and eroded. So I've linked that in as well. And again, all the theories that I link in are relevant. I'm not just overloading it with theory after theory after theory, I'm linking it to my argument. Now for weakness, girls were once said to have a bedroom culture that helped them develop their language and communication skills. Again, it's another theory that girls were said to have better language and communication skills because of their whole bedroom culture of playing with dolls, interacting with other girls, whereas boys would be out in the field playing football and sports, what have you. But a flaw within these theories is that, again, these theories, about the whole theories that I've covered so far, is that they can be argued to be outdated, as both males and females in today's world spend a lot of their childhood or time using technology, which is a gender neutral activity. So what I'm doing now is showing that these theories that we've covered so far are a little bit outdated because the world is changing. I'm applying it to our current world, and again, using a good AO2 skill there. So AO2 is when you use examples again from your current world as well as other things. An example would be if you're talking about crime, you can use the London riots as an example. If you're talking about the media, you can use Grenfell Tower or other tragedies around the world as examples. But back to this. Thus, this could positively impact boys' literacy skills as they are exposed to a lot of text and linguistics. So what I'm saying is that because they're shifting towards using technology quite a lot, they're constantly interacting with text, and that could actually boost their skills. Linguistics, not so much. Maybe that has a detrimental effect on both sexes. We're yet to know. But there's little mention of what contemporary societal changes and of what impact technology advances may have on both, or has had on both sexes. So what I'm saying here, what we've covered so far, again, we're using sort of recent to outdated theories, but again, we do not know what the future may hold, so it's an impasse there to some extent. Now the last one, I'm going to run through it again. So the last PESW paragraph, furthermore, it's problematic to determine whether changes in attitudes towards women and their place in society has resulted in girls outperforming boys, or whether education as a whole is more suited to girls. But to explain on the last point, could radical subcultures be seen as a root of the problem? So what I'm saying here, it's hard to ascertain whether it's concepts or issues outside of school that are affecting the girls' achievement or boys' underachievement, or whether it's what's happening within the schools. But maybe could the subcultures that boys possess be the root of the problem? So again, this is the third dimension to this argument. So Epstein, another theorist, examined the way masculinity is constructed within schools. So working class boys are likely to be subjected to homophobic and abusive taunts if they appear to be academic, similar to Paul Willis here. So Epstein observed working class boys, and if they saw anyone to be getting on with the work or somewhat academic, they would ridicule the boys or taunt them. For these boys, they favour tough and hard manual work with emphasis on strength and masculinity, a view supported by Mackingill and observed by Paul Willis learning to labour study. Again, I'm not going into great depth, but I'm saying that these theorists also support this view. Thus, when talking about failing boys, the issue is largely around working class boys and how they're interacting with the education system. So again, I'm talking about class here as well as gender. I'm involving class. So again, gender is an issue, as you can see from the item. But again, can we involve class? Is class more of an issue here? So strength. Maybe this explains the decline in achievement, with the identity of girls shifting to typically or historically male employment. So historically, men would have the bulk of the employment, but now girls are going into their industry. And again, identity, roles, attitudes in society are constantly changing, and maybe boys have become increasingly anti-school in order to affirm their working class masculinity. So maybe because the girls' role are changing, the boys are trying to find their own sort of identity, and they're maybe becoming more anti-school, more opposed to how school works, may affirm or bring out their masculinity, their working class identity. Again, this is somewhat of an assumption, but I'm saying their theory could be having a strength, or could having a point in terms of this argument here. Now, weakness. Again, the theorists that have been mentioned focus on working class phenomena. So what I'm saying here, these theorists have all focused on working class boys, and it is deterministic, so sort of assuming that this is always the case, to argue that class and subculture still have a part to play in contemporary Britain. So again, is this still the case? Is something else happening here? Is it class that's always impacting the achievement of these boys, or is something else happening here? Now, I'm sort of going to explain that. For example, UCAS have reported that poor white males are the least represented at university. So of all the ethnic and class and gender groups, white working class boys are the least represented. And this could be down to the increasing university costs that affect the poorest rather than their culture. So it's all good saying that it's their culture that's holding them back, but is it the fact that we're charging £9,000 a year tuition fees for university that's putting off these boys? Or is it the whole culture of education as a whole? There needs to be an examination of the knock-on effects of such policy. Rather, it is how the system works for working class boys and not the other way around that could illuminate, so sort of bring out how to address the gender differences. So what I'm doing here is being critical. I'm not doing what these theorists do, saying that it's the education system's fault or that it's the boys' culture's fault. Again, I will be looking at how we can help these boys and what they need. Again, I'm not assuming that their culture has certain aspects of it as the theories do. I'm not assuming that they can't get along with school, that school is sort of damaging them. I'm saying, how can we address these issues? Maybe it's about us getting rid of this tag of class that could help us. Any other business paragraph? Now, again, for a 20 marker, should be spending about 30 minutes on this. So after you've done your 3 paragraphs, your PES paragraphs, after your intro, you've got any other business. So this is where you can include any theories or any other concepts or ideas that you can use to strengthen your ideas or what you covered so far. So I haven't referred to the item for a while, so referring back to item A, internal and external factors are heavily interlinked, meaning that these issues are closely entwined, they overlap quite a lot. And there's still the issue of teacher expectations, the labelling, and the lack of male teachers, which are all attributes to have a massive impact on the unachievement of boys as a whole. So what I've done here, I've included concepts and issues that I knew was relevant to the question. But again, if you go through all of these, you're not going to have enough time to go through them. So you pick the 3 key ones, or 3 ones that you know the best, or that can be applicable to the question, and go through them. Because I've got time on my hands, or that I'm under the time limit, I put a bit more in here. For example, French and Francis both noted that boys receive a lot of teacher attention down to reprimands, and thus lower expectations of these boys, or thus had lower expectations of these boys. So because these boys take a lot of time being told off, the teachers think, you know what, you're not academic, you don't get along, I'm not expecting you to get anything less than a fail, in short. This could result in a self-fulfilling prophecy. So again, AO2, I'm applying different concepts on top, where boys can live up to the teacher-given identity, and this would make sense when taking into account previous explanations of identity crisis. So in my essay, I was talking about how boys form their identities, and I'm saying how labelling and self-fulfilling prophecy could also impact that. Now, I'm not going to go through the rest, but what I've done here is trying to include other concepts, ideas that can affect the boys here. That could be a link to my essay. So any other business is your opportunity to include any other concepts or issues that you know that can strengthen your essay. Question the question. So this is where you look at the question, look at this back up, and you sort of question whether we should be asking this question, whether this is actually an issue at all, or is there any better ways to look at this issue? So we can tell that boys are underachieving. Okay. So I've said here, in terms of the question at hand, it is not desirable to evaluate underachievement through gender, as it could be argued that this is the emphasis of the root of the problem, or that having an emphasis on gender is in fact the problem in the first place. So what I'm saying here, okay, you've asked me to look at educational differences through gender, but again, us looking at educational differences through gender is a problem, because you're gendering different groups and saying, because you're working class boys, you're going to be under these sort of pressures, have this sort of culture, be at this position. Because you're a white middle class girl, you're going to succeed. So maybe we should get rid of this whole idea of gender and look at what's happening within our own education system and how to get these people to succeed. Moreover, we should move away from gendered assumptions and explanations and focus on the needs of all pupils in the bid to objectively address the differences in achievement. So I'm saying here, how can we be objective, how can we be unbiased if we are always looking at people's labels or people's attributes, people's characteristics? Now, question the question does take a lot of practice, so I would argue that you should be going through essay questions, looking at how you can question it. If you get a question on how to evaluate functionalist perspectives on education, or Marx's explanations of education, you can always argue, should we be using Marx's views because they're quite outdated, they were constructed largely in the last century, maybe they're a bit old. Functionalists, again, they have much of a purpose in a modern context, etc. and etc.
Conclusions.
Right, so the conclusion, again, start with to conclude to a large extent, to a large degree, to some degree, and here I've chosen to a large extent. So set up your conclusion, make it clear to the examiner that you are concluding your essay. You've got to outline what the major strengths of your essay, what's the major weakness of the concepts you've covered, and where do you side, and what is your contribution to the argument, and finish up by having a final say in the question. So, to a large extent, it's undesirable and problematic to evaluate underachievement by gender, although a major strength is that within statistics and sociological investigation, it highlights major differences between groups. So I'm saying it's hard to look at underachievement through gender because there's many different things happening. So you can't look at boys underachieving because you've got to take into account class, because working class boys are at the bottom of the pile, whereas white middle class boys are further up. So it's hard to look at underachievement through gender, but it does highlight that there is an issue at hand between these groups. On the other hand, it is hard to evaluate the impact of these non-observable phenomena. So phenomena is what happens within society, and non-observable is stuff that you can't really see with your eyes. So you can't really see culture, can you? You can see aspects of it. Okay, that's debatable. People may argue with me, but what I'm saying here, you can't sort of see how culture impacts on someone. It's hard to measure. Labelling and subcultures are a real thing, but the impact is questionable to measure. Again, I just explained what I just said. Finally, returning to the item here, both internal and external factors have varying and questionable effects on different social groups. So it is undesirable to frame people within groups with particular characteristics, as this is part of the problem in the first place. For example, myself, I was a working class boy growing up, I'm a working class male, but I've gone to one of the best universities in the UK. So can you put me in the same category as the working class boys who are failing at GCSE level or failing to even complete their education? You can't frame people in the same sort of categories because it has their upbringing has different impact on them. Okay, and in your conclusion, I'd always bring in the theories that you think has the most relevance. So, thus, Sewell and the other theorists who mention labelling as a major factor in boys' underachievement can be argued to have a major contribution to the issues at hand. So what I've said here, in short, is that a strength of this argument, or the whole question, is that you can look at how different groups underachieve or achieve, and you can start to look at why that might be the case. But I'm saying it could be the root of the problem in the first place. For us to frame people and categorize people in these subgroups, that might be the whole reason in the first place. Because if you're going to do that from the top end, within schools, teachers may do that. There may be a culture of, right, those working class boys are not going to get on. You'll be lucky to get them to do certain parts of your work, so on and so forth. Again, with this essay, in short, the AO1 skills are done when you outline the theorists and what they say, and the concepts when you're defining them. So AO1 showing that you know and understand. AO2, when you're applying these theories to an argument, you're applying different parts of sociology like social policy to the argument. You're applying examples from your current life world. I think I used one with UCAS there. AO3 is within your strengths and weaknesses of your PES paragraph. So the strength, you're evaluating, you're analysing, and same with the weakness part. So by following this structure here, you can hit all the AO criteria and construct an essay that has been tailored to you to pass. Again, this structure here was given to my school by an AQA conference, so it is the one that's been suggested by the exam board. And again, I'll leave a link to this essay so you can read through it in your own time. But thank you for listening.
Thank you for watching. I hope what you've heard has been somewhat interesting, somewhat useful. Again, just remember those acronyms, run through them, and I'm sure you get those A's and the A stars. Don't try to contact me, because I won't contact you back.